Hey there, it's Ravena here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my July wrap-up part 2. I read 18 books in July and I'm here to wrap up the rest of the books that I read in the month. I'll have content warnings in the description box down below and also a link to the first part if you missed out on that. But without further ado, let's get right down to the books. So the first book that I want to talk to you about is the only book that I've reread this year so far, and it's actually a reread of a book that I've already read this year in January. That's how much I love this book. And the reread is For Sinner by Simone. Okay, I reread this through audiobook this time. Like, please, can I just get a round of applause for that audiobook narrator, because his voice is so sexy and matches this book so well. I have never been the kind of person who listened to an audiobook and was like, yeah, I could fall in love with this voice, but now I understand what all of you romance readers are talking about. So let me tell you about the book. If you haven't been here for my January wrap-up, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. This is the second book in the series, but it's actually where I recommend you start with the series. It is for people who like an age gap romance. It is for people who is open to religious imagery in their romance books. It's for people who like to read about grief. Because in this one, we're following this playboy who is known for getting whatever he wants, and he flirts with this girl at a party and actually really likes her, but it turns out that it is the younger sister of his best friend who he hasn't seen for years, as she's all grown up and she's in the process of training to be a nun. And so he decides he's going to back away best friend's younger sister, nun in training, not a reason to mess around with her. But then she comes back to him because before she can become a nun, her head of the nuns says that it's really good to know about all the things you are going to be giving up, and one of the things that she's going to be giving up is of course the ability to have sex with different people, and she's never had sex before, so she's come to him to say, can you teach me about sex and all the stuff that I would be missing if I did decide to become a nun as part of my training. And there we start the book. And throughout this, Sean, our main character, his mother has got terminal cancer, and so it's just a matter of waiting and that process. Let me tell you, this book is just something else, okay? I think with romance, you kind of need to find the thing that works for you personally, and I understand that from reviews I've seen of books 1, 2 and 3, everybody's got a different favourite for different reasons. This one is my favourite. I don't know what that tells you about me, hopefully not that much, but I love it. I think it's really good. I think it's super sexy. The heated scenes are just... they're so steamy, but also I really love seeing Sean develop. He learns so much within that relationship while getting to be himself, and even though she's going through a lot of firsts sexually, he's going through a lot of firsts emotionally, and seeing those two parallel journeys kind of cross and intersect is perfect for me as a character loving development reader. I also appreciated the grief storyline. It does not get forgotten or lost in all of this sexy steamy romance that we're reading. I think it's integrated really well and the balance is really there, and it's so emotional to see Sean kind of dealing with that responsibility of trying to look after his family while also just grieving ahead of time and grieving throughout the process. It was read to me by this man with a very sexy voice, and I had a great time, and I rated my reread 5 stars. Let's leave it there. Go and watch my January wrap up if you want to hear more. But I'm still going to continue talking about romance, but this time young adult, because I also read Autobiography by Christina and Lauren. They're very well known for their adult romances, but just to flag, this is their young adult romance. And this, I loved this, okay? I flew through this book. I think I read it in a day and a half. I couldn't put it down to the point where I stayed up late to read it, and then I had to wake up early so I could finish it before going to my sister's baby shower. That's how much it consumed me, but it's not a perfect book either. So this is a young adult book that follows this bisexual teenage boy. He was out where he used to be, but since then his family have moved to a very Mormon town. If you watch my first part, you know I've been reading a lot about Mormonism lately, and so where he is in this Mormonism town, he's kind of been forced to go back into the closet because it's not particularly safe or healthy for him to be out here, while his family are fully supportive of him, so at home he can just be himself. It's a really different story when he goes to school and he interacts with his friends. For example, he's got a lovely best friend called Autumn, and he goes and enrolls in this creative writing class where you're supposed to write a creative story throughout your final year, and it's the year before university. And this student who used to go there, who is an author now, published a book, has come to help out with that class, and the moment they lock eyes, they fall for each other. But of course, he is the son of the pastor or something like that, the son of someone who's really important in Mormonism, and so he is definitely closeted. That's what this book is about, okay? It's so cute. It's so cute, but it's also so full of the teen boy angst. Like, this is super angsty, and if you grew up in the Twilight Girl era and you love your angsty romance, this is exactly what you're going to get reading this book. I will die on the hill where I say that the insta-love in this book, they literally fall in love as soon as their eyes connect. That insta-love is because the book is not just talking about them falling for each other, and they fall in love quickly so that Christina and Lauren have space to talk about so many other things in this novel, and that's why I believe they fall in love very fast, and I will die on that hill. Fall in love really fast so it can talk a lot about what it's like to be queer and also to be religious, and try and form your concepts around faith and queerness. Sebastian is the one who's the son of the Mormon figurehead, and he is not losing out on his faith because he's realized that he's queer. He just has a long journey to go with his queer identity and with finding himself, but also he's kind of started to fall for someone in the process of figuring out his queer identity. So, and his faith identity being kind of re-established or reformed in light of what he's discovering about himself. So he's going through a time. He's got a lot of identity and learning to figure out about himself, who he is and what he wants to believe and how he wants to carry himself. And even though this is told entirely from Tanner's perspective, who is not him, you get to really visibly see him go on that journey and struggle with it emotionally and take the time to do that. This book spans longer than you think a young adult contemporary would, and I appreciate that because it's not easy to figure those things out quickly, and I liked seeing him do that. But Tanner as well, as someone who used to be out but then is closeted again, who is bi, he's got a lot to work through too, and I think it did a good job of showing what it's like to have been out but have to be closeted again for some particular reason. I don't read about that a lot and in fiction, so that was kind of fascinating to learn more about. It did a really good job of dealing with its tough topics really well, and I shipped their romance and I wanted them to succeed, and it's very different from the other Christina Lauren book that I read, but I think it balanced everything so well, and the ending was perfect. It landed where it needed to land. Oh, and it showed how teenagers can be so messy in their relationships. Like, not only does it bring you the angst, it brings you the messiness. And sometimes I was reading it and I was like, no, they're not doing that, please. But they were. And they made choices that I believe teenagers would make. And they did things that I think teenagers would do. Their frontal lobes aren't fully developed. Let them be messy, let them be teenagers, let them work out their own way. But throughout this, I do think some of the adults were very realistic. Even those who were trying to be as supportive as they can had to put their foot down sometimes. So I really appreciated seeing kind of how involved the adults were, and to what degree. Even though, of course, I don't love all the adults. Some adults were nicer than others. I recommend this book. It was a good time. Okay, I'm talking a lot about romance. I did not just read romance this month. This is the last romance book I'm going to talk about. But I wouldn't only classify it as a romance. I would actually call this young adult contemporary. The other one was young adult contemporary romance. This is just a young adult, and that's Loveboat Taipei by Abigail, Hing, Wen. I loved this book and I rated it 5 stars. This is what you would call an Olivia Savannah book down to a fault. We're following this Asian American teenager. All she wants to do is dance. She has a huge passion for that, but all her parents want to do is for her to go to medical school, and she has resigned herself to that fact. She doesn't like the sight of blood. It makes her feel queasy, but her parents have not moved from Asia to America and kind of suffered through poverty and hard work for her to be able to just throw away their dreams for her. So she's resigned herself to what she's going to do, but she gets shipped off to Taipei for a like summer school situation. But what her parents don't know is that actually this summer camp, even though it says it's about learning Mandarin and about getting skills and studying really hard, it's secretly also just a really fun camp, and it's actually called Loveboat Taipei because of the amount of love drama that typically happens there, and clubbing and shenanigans that teenagers get up to. So she decides she's going to give herself that 1 month of camp to be as wild and courageous and do whatever she wants to do, break all her parents' rules before she goes back home and goes to med school and does what her parents want her to do. Basically, it's a summer where everybody finds themselves, and it gives you love drama. What more could I want? The love drama is intense. Is it a love triangle? Is it a love square? It was one of those cases where I did not know who she was going to choose. There's like the typical bad boy character, and there's the really good goody two-shoes characters, and then there's some guys that are kind of interested in her as well, and she's got a lot of choice, but the characters are not all that they seem. Like, they do have depth to them, they do have caveats, but equally they're all really, really nice. Like, even the bad boy is actually a nice bad boy. Like, when has he actually been bad? He's just called bad. So because all of them are really nice and nice to her, I didn't know who I shipped her with most. I didn't know who she was going to choose. So I had a very intense time reading this book. It was an experience, it was a journey for me as a reader. But what I actually loved even more than the romantic shenanigans was seeing each character find themselves and find what works for them. And I'm saying for them in particular because they do a lot that isn't for them. It shows how when your identity has been put onto you or foisted upon you by someone else, you might think by doing the opposite of what they say you'll be able to find yourself, but that is not particularly always true. And not only does our main character have development and find herself, but the friends that she forms does and do. And also the people that she's in a relationship with at different points, the boys, as I've mentioned, they all have their individual journeys. But then some of the like secondary characters, you also see their personal identity journeys, and everybody is finding themselves in different ways throughout different shenanigans, and it's balanced incredibly well. She does a very good job of touching on, with a sprinkling, different tropes. So if you like fake dating, there's a fake dating moment. If you like the hurt comfort, there's like a little bit of that. If you like the injured but needs to be cared for, there's like a moment of that too. So she throws in a lot of different tropes, but she balances it with an overall and overarching story, and the theme of identity is so heavily there, not only in what it means to be someone who's Chinese American, but also what it means to be yourself and follow your passions, follow your dreams, while also respecting that of your adults and the elders in your life, and where you need to stand up for yourself, but where maybe you do want to abide by the rules, and trying to find those balances and points and places. I just think it did it all really, really well, and I loved it. I couldn't put it down, and by the time I reached the ending I was just like, oh, that was perfect. Those moments were exactly what I needed to see from this book, and it gave it to me, it fed it to me, it gave me drama, it gave me hope, it gave me sad moments, it gave me smiles, and it made me truly believe that being yourself and taking the time to learn what being yourself means and how that might change over time is so important to being happy. This book took me by surprise. This is The Old Woman with the Knife by Byeong-mo. It's translated by Chi Young Kim, and I had such a good time. So this one is following an assassin, and she's an elderly assassin now. She's nearing retirement age, and she doesn't really want to give up her job. Like, what does retirement look like when you were an assassin? Try and imagine that. But she's getting older, and she makes a fatal mistake during one of her experiences, and it leads to life, or her life as she knows it, kind of spiraling in a direction that she did not expect. You can read this in two ways. You can read this as a literary thriller, okay, because it does deliver on the fact that she's an assassin, and it doesn't shy away from that. There are moments of body gore, there are fights, there are battles, there's assassinations that very much do happen on the page, and I was living for it. And because it's a literary thriller though, it's kind of written in a more literary way than typical thriller language is. There's none of those short staccato sentences. Instead, I think if you've read a lot of East Asian fiction, you'll know that there's a certain style to how they write. It's very straightforward, but it's also quite lyrical in some ways. This comes with that, while also being an assassin story. There's themes of grief in here, there's themes of memory and what it means when you're getting older and you might be losing some of those memories, and how you can hold on to them as best you can, or the feeling of wanting to hold on to them as best you can, grieving the life that you've lived and knowing that your life is coming to a point where everything is going to change. But also a lot about anger and revenge and pain is included in this, as you think would happen when you're someone who's assassinated several people over several years. And I wasn't expecting it to have as much about love in it as it did. It's not love in the romantic love story sense as you might think, but like love for people who have come in and out of your life and what it might mean to live life alone, as you might have to do if you're an assassin. I was so impressed by how balanced this one was, and again I read it very fast in like 2 days or something because I didn't want to stop. I wanted to know how it was going to end. There's quite a lot of suspense to this story and it's just so unique. I haven't read a book like this about an elderly assassin or this kind of assassin, and of course if assassins don't get murdered or assassinated themselves, they must live to an elderly age, and what would that really be like? Fascinating. Such a good book, and not enough people are reading it and trying it and talking about it, so people really should pick this book up. Underhyped for sure. I did read some middle grade this month, so I read The Thief of Farrowfell by Ravena Guron. This is set in a world where edible magic exists, so you have to eat the magic for it to take form, and we're following our main character. She is called Jude, and she lives in a supervillain family. So she is a daughter of a supervillain family and they commit crimes and they get paid in magic. She is undervalued in her family. They don't want her to be committing crimes, they just want her to study, and she's looked down on as not being able to do anything right. So she takes it upon herself to sneak out and steal something to prove that she deserves to be in her family. However, the magic she steals is cursed and she needs to undo this curse best that she can. I read this book and I was like, it was okay, and then I thought about it and I thought about it and I was like, actually this book is really, really good. So I think this is one that children are really gonna like because it's so fun, there's so much adventure happening, there's so many sneaky things that she has to do, and she's learning what it really means to be a villain, but she's also learning what it really means to not be a villain at the same time. And it was just one of those middle grades where they go through certain adventures and they need to do certain things to get to the next point. It was all fine and dandy and a good time, but it wasn't hitting deeper notes for me that I personally like in my middle grade, but I know children will read and enjoy whatsoever. It's got the whimsy, it's got the magic, it's got the fun, it's got the friendships, and it's got this larger family dynamic, like reading about the villain family for once. It's so unique. And it reached the ending and I was surprised. Like, not everything lined up in the way that I thought it was. There were plot twists that I as an adult didn't see coming, and the ending, where it ended, was not where I expected them to be at all, but I loved where it ended. It was such a pleasant surprise to me. So I read it and I thought, oh, that was fine, that was good, but I didn't think about the underlying themes to this. And post reading it, I took the time to really think about this book as I was trying to rate it, and I discovered that under the surface, this book is dealing with so many themes that are really important for children to kind of think about, for adults to think about even, and I really liked it. Because what do you do when you realize that people you love are toxic for you? And that is what this book kind of unpacks to a major degree. And I liked how it ended on that storyline, what they settled on with being from a toxic family and whether you can still love them when you know that they do horrible things. I really liked how it ended. It also talked about the family and friends that you choose for yourself, and how the friends that you choose, found family vibes, could become your family. I think it showed that in a very understandable and clear, uncomplicated way for children to process. It talks about good and bad, but also that messy place in between, which can be kind of hard to discuss with children. Like, when are you doing something that might break the rules a little bit, but it's actually for the best? It's so hard because you want to teach your children at a young age that if you follow rules, you're going to be doing the right thing, but that's not necessarily true in the life that we live. Sometimes following the way that things are done does not always lead you to the right answer, and I think discreetly underneath it you've got to dig, but it sets the seeds for children to understand that kind of concept in this book. But it also shows you that not everyone is toxic. There are people you can trust, that people who will love you and like you for who you are and support you, and the characters do go on character development journeys that are really nice to see unfold. So yeah, this book actually has a lot more depth to it than I gave it credit for, and I really liked it, and I will try and read more by this author. It's also got these little illustrations at the start of chapters. They're not big illustrations, but they're nice ones to see added in there. They're all in black and white. I read 2 graphic novels this month and both of them were okay. So the first one was The Faint of Heart by Kerilynn Wilson. This is a graphic novel about a world where everybody has their hearts removed because that takes away the negative emotions such as sadness or guilt or depression. But what they don't realize is it takes away the positive emotions as well, and there's only one girl who decides to keep her heart. But she also finds a heart that has been abandoned on the street, which shouldn't be there because all of the hearts are supposed to be locked up and kept safe. So she takes this heart, she discovers something about it, and she discovers that maybe what they've been told about heart removal is not necessarily the truth. This artwork is really lovely. It's kind of got Kerilynn vibes to the artwork, and the colour palette is kind of like, as you see on the cover, like dark greys with bright little yellow moments and bright red and bright blue sometimes. So it does the cool colours really well with a nice spot of colour to kind of brighten up the darkness, and I like that about it. And she kind of forms a friend and goes on this journey, and it was all fine and good and I was having a great time, but then it got to the point where it needed to reach a conclusion, it needed to reach an ending, and it just completely rushed it. It didn't make any sense, the ending. It didn't quite add up to what we'd been taught so far in the graphic novel, and it was almost like the author didn't have any more pages and she just needed to reach an ending. And so while the ending was nice and all, I was just like, you really rushed it to fit it into those pages. And if the graphic novel could have been twice as long and taken its time with the ending and the explanations and had a bit more time to unpack that journey, I think I would have really liked this. It was just a big case of it all being rushed in the last 50 or so pages, and that did not work. Now, my feelings and thoughts on this one largely has to do with the fact that it was a review copy. This is Firebird by Sunmi. We're following these two girls. One of them is a lesbian who is out at school, but she's not out at home, and the other one is a girl who just seems really unhappy with her life, and she is struggling to connect to her mother, children of Asian immigrants. I believe it's set in America, and she's just really unhappy with her life, and gradually she starts to discover maybe things about not only her sexuality and who she fancies, but also about her gender identity and how she wants to identify. And that's what this book is about. It's one of those like quiet stories where it's really coming of age, it's moving and it's emotional. It's not about a plot, it's about them discovering themselves and also forming this relationship. But because it's such an early review copy, I don't think you can see, but the artwork is sincerely incomplete. It's just sketches, and I think it was a bit too early to be sending out review copies for this one, because at this stage I can't review the art whatsoever. And for a graphic novel, artwork is a big part of it, and artwork has a big part to play. And so while I don't mind when review copies are often actually in black and white because the colouring hasn't been done, if the artwork itself is not done, I can't comment on it. So I felt like I only read like the bare bones of this book, because I read the dialogue but there was no artwork for me to say my thoughts on. So artwork excluded. The story is nice, but it didn't have that depth to it, and I wonder if some of the artwork might add the depth to it, and it just kind of happened and then finished. It was very slice of life. There was no conclusions to their journeys, so I personally just was like but also it's like a if I read a finished copy maybe it would be a but yeah. I read a poetry collection. This was A Little Resurrection by Selina and Nwulu, and I rated this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved this collection. It was stunning. It was lovely. How do I describe it? So I'm just going to actually read you the synopsis. In poems all the way more powerful for their hard-won joys, Nwulu offers the self in a state of flux, battling erasure with empathy and intellectual curiosity. Wow, what a great way to summarize this book. It is really about identity and your being, and how you can feel quite lost in that, and you're trying to find your sense of place and discovering yourself. Can you see what themes I like to read about from this wrap up? And also the feeling of erasure that does come with racism, because a lot of these books about what it means to be female and what it means to be black and what it means to resurrect yourself, resurrect who you believe yourself to be in a new light, whether that's moving situation, whether that's rediscovering who you are, whether that's re-identifying how you call yourself. And the poems are just absolutely fascinating. They're not super long, but they're not too short. The wordings were just too powerful. Some of them are based on true moments and true experiences and true people, and you can see that from the anger and the rage and the sadness and the mourning that is in those poems. But then some of them are very incredibly, it feels self-reflective to the persona of the poem, and it's about discovering yourself. And I feel like I discovered myself when reading this book, and I'm not even being over dramatic. Some of these poems just spoke to me in such a pure sense, and I think that's what good poetry can do, is when the poet might be writing for themselves, but they're also writing for you to see yourself in that poem. And oh my goodness, I did. It felt like reading Audre Lorde poetry. That's how powerful it was. This is definitely one of my new favourite poetry collections of all time, and I can't believe I just picked this up off a shelf without having heard of this poet before. People, read poetry, read her book. And last but not least, we have the picture book of the month, and that is this one, You Can Do Anything Tyrone by Lenny Henry. So this one is about a boy who says, I can't do it, I can't do this. And he's spending time with his grandfather, and his grandfather says, no, I'm not having that. You can do anything, Tyrone, and proceeds to show him all the things that he can do. This picture book is delightful. It's written in rhyming couplets, and I don't think all of the rhymes worked perfectly. Some of them felt a little bit forced. Is your child going to notice that? No. Is the child reading it going to notice that? No. So it's perfectly fine, and I don't really consider that a major criticism. But I'll just say it was just lovely to see like a young child and grandfather combination. The artwork in it is so bright and so colourful and playful and beautiful. I just loved all of the stark colours on the pages. And I'm sorry, the artist, the illustrator for this, who is it? Illustrated by Salome Doku, A+. She gets an A+ because she mastered the art and the colours and the style in this. But the message of you are a black boy and you can do anything is just one that we still need to be pushing, that we still need to see out there. But also, if you're not a black reader, you can also appreciate the message. It's good for children to understand that they can be anything, and it also kind of puts into context what it takes to get there. It talks about the fact that you need to daydream and imagine and believe that you can get there, but it doesn't ignore the fact that you need to put elbow grease and effort into getting there. You can't just do anything by doing nothing to get there. So I like that it kind of focused on those two elements discreetly while making it fun and playful and bright and colourful. What a lovely picture book. Really recommend it, and one I'm gonna want to give to my nephew as well. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in July. Please let me know in the comment section down below, if you had to pick one of these books to read, which one would you choose? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button to read more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards, Excelsior.